are discussing. Okay, so coming back to Gerald Ginet, we talked about 5 important categories that Gerald Ginet introduced, and those important categories are: one very important category, order. Order is how an event, how an episode is inserted into the first narrative. And when we say first narrative, we are talking about a narrative, a basic narrative, which we can say follows a certain sequence. So the narrative starts at point A and it finishes at point X. Now, in this whole sequence, some events may be introduced at different places, an episode may be inserted at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. That is, again, the choice that a novelist or a filmmaker makes. So we discussed that concept of order, and in that concept of order, two concepts were important. One is the concept of going into past, that is flashback technique, and one introducing something that takes place in future, which is called prolepsis. And we also define certain other categories of analepsis and prolepsis. So, for example, internal analepsis, something which is part of the story; external analepsis, something which comes from outside; internal, say, analepsis also introduces, say, a detail about character. So that is again part of internal analysis, and there the term is homodiegetic analysis. Similarly, we can have an incident or an episode inserted into the narrative which comes or which seems to come from outside, but somehow that fits in with the narrative. And there we had number of examples from films and from fiction also. I gave you one interesting example from Gabriel Garcia Marquez's novel 100 Years of Solitude, where a future detail is described in the very beginning. Many years later, when he faced the firing squad, Colonel Arliano Bundia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to a fair where they discovered ice for the first time. Distant event in future. That means he will face the firing squad. He is not yet an army man. He is a child. So that means already a future event or some future details or some details which will be taken up later in the narrative, they are already introduced at the beginning. But how we will reach that particular point, that remains important, because we had already introduced the concept of the concordant. Concordant means all narratives move towards a close, and that is the distinction between life and narrative. A narrative must have a sense of an ending, right? Even somebody like Christian Metz, and Christian Metz is especially important for students of cinema because he is also a structuralist. And you know that Christian Metz wrote a very famous book about the language of films, and that book uses the approach called semiotics that we will be discussing maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So Christian Metz also talks about a narrative, and he identifies some important characteristics of a narrative. So one very important characteristic of narrative is that it has a beginning and it has an ending. That means it is a kind of temporal sequence. Temporal means it exists in time. And furthermore, a narrative is also a closed sequence. That means if it is a sequence of events, then it is a closed sequence. That means it ends. And of course, it is also a discourse. That is Christian Metz's term. And further, you can say a closed sequence of events. It is a closed sequence of events. That means sequence is an important word in any study of narratives. And events constitute a narrative, or events at any rate are very important aspects of a narrative. So something which is closed, something which has a beginning, something which has an ending, these are aspects of a narrative. So order, we discussed the concept of order, and we saw that how certain things can be introduced at different times. Now here I would like you to think about some films made by Christopher Nolan, especially if you recall the film The Prestige, right? Or say some other films also. Say if you watch that film for the first time, you'll have problem locating the incidents. Say when a particular incident takes place, when a particular detail is inserted, whether it comes from the past or it comes from the future. Somebody was asking about applying this particular theory. Amreen was asking this question. So if you just see this narrative which is built by Nolan, and you see this film, and you can talk about say all say terms which are used by Gerald Gine, terms which talk about an ellipsis and terms which talk about prolapses. Similarly, you can also take up a novel, a simple novel, any novel for that matter, and we can possibly use these concepts. Okay, I have a novel which some students are supposed to read. We already discussed a portrait by Joyce, right? How in Joyce certain concepts are used. But let me just read the first sentence of this novel, The Razor's Edge, and we'll come back to this. How does the narrator begin? I have never begun a novel with more misgiving. And this is part one. I have never begun a novel with more misgiving. If I call it a novel, it is only because I don't know what else to call it. Right. And the second chapter of this novel begins like this. In 1919, I happened to be in Chicago on my way to the Far East. And for reasons that have nothing to do with this narrative, I was staying there for 2 or 3 weeks. That means something has already taken place. It is talking about past. So we always determine time. We always try to make sense of time which a narrative is dealing with. Here, two things were important. The narrator is speaking in first person, and the narrator is talking about some past events. Remember this point, because this point will become important very soon. So we are done with the concept of order. We are not going to repeat this again. Second important concept was the concept of duration. And in duration, you know that a narrative treats time in a certain manner. And it can treat time by accelerating the pace of events, or it can simply stop the speed of something. So when you use the device of summary, that means it is kind of acceleration. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. The king met his rival, the king killed his rival, and then his son grew up, and the son also became a king. There is lot many details are just elided over, left, skipped. So here, either in the form of summary or in the form of ellipsis, when something is not said but that is implied, we see the writer or a novelist uses time in a particular manner. So ellipsis, summary, these are aspects of acceleration. And what are the aspects of deceleration? One is description and another is scene, right? So that is one point that we discussed at length. Then there was this concept of frequency, order, duration, frequency, right? Now order duration, and frequency. We have already discussed frequency can be singulative, that means an event is there and it is narrated only once because it happens only once. Usually in films, usually in cinema, usually in novels, an incident happens only once and that is narrated only once, right? But there are times when an incident is repeated. That means it happens only once. It happens only once, but it is repeated number of times. This is a common device, and you can search some examples of this repetition. So this is again an aspect of application. Read a novel, and if you see that a particular event is repeated number of times, although it takes place only once, that is an aspect of, say, repetitive frequency. I gave you an example from the film Born Identity. This series, it shows you a character who is talking to another character. That means the central character is talking to another character, and the other character is asking him to do something, to commit himself to a certain task. And he says, I can't, I can't. Now, at the beginning of the film, that is shown, but it is shown in a very vague manner. You cannot make sense of the whole thing. You are not given all those details about that situation, when that situation came up, and what were the circumstances, what was the reason for that exchange. Say, you have to commit yourself to it. No, I can't. But that, say, scene or that exchange is repeated in the film number of times. That means it had taken only once, but it is repeated number of times. It takes place only once, but it is repeated number of times. So that is also an aspect of frequency. Third aspect is something takes place many times in a narrative. That means number of times something happens, but it is narrated only once. Right. Now, if you remember novels like Anna Karenina, and I have a vague recollection of that novel because characters are always going to pick mushrooms. They are going to the field to pick mushrooms. Obviously, that is something that takes place many times and it is also repeated many times. But this incident, say, about a character being asked to commit himself to something and then he is saying no, this happens only once, but repeated number of times. With some effort, you can also find examples of iterative frequency, where you see that something is done only once, something happens only once, but it is repeated number of times. After that, we discuss another important category, that was the category of mood. And mood is further divided into distance and perspective. Distance and perspective. So if we say distance, distance basically is further divided into device of telling and device of showing. That means a narrative can be diegetic and a narrative can be mimetic. That means there are these two very important and also conventional devices of storytelling. When a particular narrative is diegetic, when a particular narrative is diegetic, that means the narrator is describing that thing. The narrator is describing that thing. So if I take this example, In 1919, I happened to be in Chicago on my way to the Far East, and for reasons that have nothing to do with this narrative, I was staying there for 2 or 3 weeks. This is an example of telling something. That means it is diegetic in nature. The narrator is telling something. On the other hand, mimesis means where you have exchange between characters, and usually you have that in the form of a dialogue. So for example, from the same novel, I pick up a conversation. Eliot tells me that you came over by the southern route, said Mrs. Bradley. Did you stop in Rome? Yes, I spent a week there. And how is dear Queen? Somewhat surprised by her question, I said, I didn't know. If you see this, and I am reading it again, Eliot tells me that you came over by the southern route. This is in inverted commas. Eliot tells me that you came over by the southern route in inverted commas because it is a speech of a character. Said Mrs. Bradley, did you stop in Rome? Yes, I spent a week there. And how is dear Queen? This is conversation. Now what we see here, this is device of showing something where dialogue form is used, and a play, for example, uses this device of showing. Some stories can also use this device of showing. I give you the example of Hemingway, and you can read some stories of Hemingway where you have very little intervention by the writer, very little intervention. So that means you have a device of telling where a narrator talks about something, and you also have a device of showing where the narrator shows you something. Shakespeare obviously uses device of showing, but a novel usually uses both these devices. Novel mixes diegesis with mimesis. Diegesis is telling and mimesis is showing, and a novel blends the two. And of course it does it sometimes in an interesting manner. It introduces tagged speech, and it also introduces tagged indirect speech. Now let me just read this sentence again. Eliot tells me that you came over by the southern route. This is speech, but this is tagged also. Said Mrs. Bradley. Said Mrs. Bradley. Now what is this said Mrs. Bradley? That means this is intervention on the part of the narrator. You have a speech, direct speech, but that direct speech is followed by a kind of tag. And what is that tag? Where the narrator is saying something. And you can possibly pick up number of examples where the narrator uses these tags. And you also have narratives where you have only direct speech. And obviously, if a narrative is full of only direct speech, it will have a different kind of literary quality. Then, if the writer uses the device of telling a great deal, you can just imagine the situation. You often find those novels very interesting to read, or they are easy to read when you have that use of dialogue form. But it becomes difficult to read Kafka's novel The Castle. Why it becomes difficult? Because there is very little use of direct speech. You read, say, first 50-60 pages and you'll find that there are very few examples of direct speech. And so again, coming back to your question, Amreen, don't you see that you are getting some idea about literary styles if you pay attention to these details? Now, portrait of the artist as a young man. it uses both the device of telling as well as the device of showing. And in fact, Joyce uses the device of telling a great deal. But of course, he also has his own distinction. I'll come back to that point a bit later. So you understand this thing that you have diegesis and you have mimesis, right? You have the device of telling and you also have the device of showing, right? And a story or a novel acquires a particular kind of quality. So if you read a story by Ruskin Bond, and I'm sure someone must have met Ruskin Bond. If you read a story by Ruskin Bond and there is very little use of dialogue form, but it is a description of mountains, it is a description of say those natural surroundings. In other words, where the narrator uses that device of telling. So he acquires a particular kind of style. On the other hand, if you attempt writing a story where you have all dialogues, something that you associate with Hemingway, it will have a very different kind of feel. So Hemingway's style is considered very bare style, very transparent kind of style, very direct kind of style. And obviously one reason was that he also worked as a war reporter. And as a war reporter, something had to be very, very crisp. And he learned his lessons from his experience as a journalist. So he was a journalist, and as a journalist, he had to be very crisp, he had to be very brief. And so from his journalism days, he acquired a certain style and which is used in his novels also. The other day I had mentioned this fact that every year there is also a competition about Hemingway's style. So who can write in Hemingway's style? Who can write in that manner? Right. So try writing a story which uses only dialogue form, and I think you can write that. And try writing a story which does not use any dialogue form, and you can possibly see that these are two different styles of writing. So if you have this basic lesson, you can see number of narratives in this life. But of course, here is a question. The question is, what about a film? Film does not have narration always. Only occasionally a film can have narration, but usually film consists of this device of showing. That's why it is mimetic in nature. We'll come back to this point a bit later. So we see that in mood, distance is important, and here the concept of diegesis and the concept of mimesis. These are important concepts. Apart from this, as I said, that mood is further divided into distance and perspective. Perspective is also important. And what is meaning of perspective? That means there is always a narrator in a novel, narrator. And we are learning another important lesson. This narrator also has some relationship with readers and also with characters. So how do we see these narrators? And again, there are terms given by Gerald Gine. This narrator can be non-focalized, and he uses the word focalizer. A story is always focalized. There is always a focalizer in the story. The traditional term was point of view, but somehow point of view did not present the complete picture, because there can be a narrative where a particular character sees something, but it is described by somebody else. So that means a person who describes and a person who sees, these are two different entities. And so this is a more refined category where he divides this into distance, perspective, and voice. So when we see a perspective, the narrator may know more or he may know less, right? He may know more and he may know less, right? So that means, or he may be at the same plane as others. Now this narrator can be non-focalized. That means there is no one who is focalizing that thing. That means the narrator is just effaced from the picture. The narrator is non-dramatized. You don't have any narrator as such. Or the narrator exists as a kind of covert presence. In other words, we are talking about a narrator who is omniscient. In traditional narratives, you have had this concept of omniscient narration where the narrator knows everything, but the narrator is hardly present. In all 19th century novels, or in most 19th century novels which are written in omniscient mode, narrator knows everything. He knows something about the character's mind also. And this narrator is not present actually in the narrative. This narrator is nowhere to be seen. And so this is a kind of narrative which you will call non-focalized. Non-focalized, in other words, omniscient. Narrator here is a kind of covert presence, hidden presence, non-dramatized, not presented in the story. Right. Another kind of perspective is where a novel can be internally focalized. And when we say it can be internally focalized, then it can be narrated from the point of view of one person, one character, or it can be internally focalized, but it is shown or it is narrated from different points of view. In other words, it is narrated through several characters. I'll simplify this. A non-dramatized narrator is usually one which you find in omniscient narratives, who is effaced, who is a covert presence, who is not present. But if a narrative is internally focalized, that means maybe we see something from the perspective of one character or from the perspective of 2-3 characters, right? So that means this is possible. And the third category is the novel can be externally focalized, where the narrator knows very little about his characters, or we know at least less about his characters. So if we see this novel, The Razor's Edge, here we have a character. And who is that character? Mr. Somerset Maugham himself is a character. So he is seeing something and is describing that thing. He is focalizer here. In many of those novels of Henry James, where the concept of center of consciousness is used, we see a novel from the perspective of just one character or two characters. So that is how we see a particular narrative. It can be non-focalized, it can be internally focalized, and it can be externally focalized. And similarly, there are situations when a particular narrator knows less than the characters, or he knows more, or he may be at the same footing as other characters. The final point in Gerald Genet's categories is what is called voice. what is called voice. And since we don't have any time left, I'll discuss voice in the next session, right? So we continue from this particular point. If there are any queries in the first 2-3 minutes, I can address those queries, because today we'll wind up our discussion of Girald Gine. Thank you. We meet after 15 minutes. Yes, anyone? Any query in the remaining time maybe? Or note down your queries meanwhile.